Street, working for a company called Option, doing basically developing Windows graphical interfaces.
I took that job basically to learn Windows. And I started that in March of 2003, and I immediately started to work on Rybka. That was kind of part of the plan at that point.
What chess engines in public domain when you got started had the biggest influence on the earliest versions of Rybka?
Well, actually, I started in kind of a strange way. I printed out just about every single paper there was to print out about computer chess. All these academic papers, a lot of them are interesting, a lot of them are just totally irrelevant, actually. So I printed out like 3,000 or 4,000 pages of paper. And I also went and I ordered from the ICGA all of their journals. It cost like 400 euros, you know, all the copies going back to like 1975. I've got these in my garage. So I kind of started to pour through that at first. That was kind of how I started. Probably it's not the most efficient way to do it. Probably the most efficient way is to take an open source program. At that point I would have been crafty and just kind of go through that. And I kind of gradually worked around to that. But yeah, I started to program in, let's say, March or April. But mostly at that point I was just kind of studying what was done, what was out there.
You released Rybka 1.0 beta to the public in December 2005. So from writing your first line of code in 2003 to that initial release at the end of 2005 would have been almost 3 years. Is that right?
Yeah, a little bit less than 3 years.
Rybka's initial beta release was, to those of us who are computer chess hobbyists, probably the most important event in computer chess since Kasparov Deep Blue. It just blew away the top programs at that time: Shredder, Fritz, Hierarchs, Junior, some of them by 100, 150 ELO points. These were well-established commercial programs, and suddenly a free beta program was clearly shown to be better in head-to-head testing. Computer chess was turned upside down. Did you foresee what an instant popular success Rybka would be?
Well, by the time I released, I realized that this was working really well. But when I started in 2003, and even on for a little bit longer, I kind of, in a way, I had some doubts because first of all, you've got these really smart guys. Let's say guys like Stefan Meyer-Cullen from Shredder. He's working. He's obviously a smart guy, and he's got basically a 10-year head start on me. So I wondered how feasible it would be to catch up with him, because that 10 years gives him all kinds of stuff, all kinds of, not only the Shredder code, but also, various applications for testing, for doing all these things, and I had to do that from scratch. So yeah, I wondered how I could do it, how that would turn out. I wasn't sure.
So did you already have a plan to turn it into a commercial product?
Yes, actually, already even back in 2003. You can ask my coworkers about that at my company. That was the plan. That's kind of how I operate. I did the same thing with chess, and that failed. But that's what I did. But I can't tell you that I was somehow 100% sure that it would work. Although I was pretty confident that I could put in a credible effort.
So you started kind of as a part-time hobby. When did you make the transition to being a full-time computer chess programmer?
Well, I quit my job, it's something like August or September of 2005. So I remember that the day, so I quit like a month before I actually left. But I remember the day I left the company was the first time Rybka ever beat Shredder in a match. Because I was playing against Shredder 9 at that point. And it was really close, it was like 50-50. But since maybe early 2005, I was kind of measuring and I was crawling up there 30% and 32%. And so I remember that was kind of interesting timing, but I guess at some point in 2005 is when I really started to realize that this is going to work.
That was a really risky move. Most of us would be scared to death of doing something like that. Didn't you fear a competitor could come along at any moment and force you back into a 9-to-5 job like most of us who are watching this video?
Oh yeah, and it's even more complicated. I had basically spent 3 or 4 years playing chess, and then I got my first job, and at some point, you start getting into your 30s, you start thinking that employers might look at you as a little bit crazy if you have too many things like this. So yeah, definitely I was a little bit scared, because I also didn't know how many improvements Stefan had. He hadn't released in a year or so. So yeah, it was risky. That's life,
So you went commercial with Rybka 2.0, which was literally, as I remember, it was a couple of hundred ELO points ahead of your nearest competitor with maximum playing strength somewhere north of 3,000. At what point did you realize you needed to get away from the business side of things and focus on programming and get partners like Convecta and ChessBase?
Well, first of all, Rybka 1.0 was commercial. I made Rybka 1.0 eventually free because you need a free version. You know, you always need a free version. That's kind of a software axiom. But later versions of Rybka 1, like Rybka 1.1, Rybka 1.2, those were already paid, and I did all of that myself. And I was in discussions. In 2006, I had discussions with just about every computer chess party you can dream about doing something. Some of the discussions were serious. For example, with ChessBase and with Convecta, they were very serious. Some of the discussions were kind of flaky. I mean, you end up just, in talking to a lot of people who are not really serious. But I remember there was one day, it was in the summer of 2006, I had already released Rybka 2, and there was a day where I spent the whole day answering emails. Like I wake up, I eat breakfast, I answer emails, I eat lunch, I answer emails, I have dinner, and then I keep answering emails. And that was kind of that was the moment where I realized, okay, I had to hurry this up, and I had to, I can't do this myself anymore. And so I chose Convecta, and that's how we did Rybka 2.
Can you tell us about your relationship with Convecta? What functions do they perform for you?
They perform everything except for the programming, which is really a lot of stuff that you might not think about. All the customer contacts, all of the sales logistics, all of the dealing with dealers, plus of course the GUI development. And now since Rybka 3, ChessBase also does that. So with Rybka 3, ChessBase and Convecta are equal to each other in their handling of Rybka.
Where is Convecta based?
They're in Moscow. I think officially they're registered in England, but they're a Russian company. They're in Moscow.
And what about ChessBase, based in Hamburg? Are they strictly a distribution channel for you, or do they serve other functions as well?
No, ChessBase does exactly the same thing that Convecta does. I guess you could call them a publisher. They have, of course, ChessBase differs from Convecta. They're a bigger company. They have more products. Convecta is a little bit more Rybka-centric in the way they do things. ChessBase has Fritz, obviously. That's kind of their main brand, and they have Play Chess, which is enormous. But they do the same things that Convecta does. They do sales, they do dealer relationships and dealer stuff. They do marketing. They make the GUI. They adapt the GUI for Rybka-specific things.
At what point did you decide a new chess GUI would enhance the Rybka experience?
I never decided that, actually. That was something that the Aquarium GUI is a Convecta product. They felt like they wanted to compete against the Fritz GUI. So ChessBase always had two products. They had their database product called ChessBase, and they had their engine GUI called Fritz, which happens to be the same name as their engine. And so Convecta always had only one of those products. They had the major database. They didn't have this kind of smaller, lighter engine GUI, and they decided to develop that. They call it Aquarium. And that project was born, I think, about 2 or 3 years ago, and I'm really impressed with how they've handled it. I mean, to go and compete against an established competitor in this kind of market is really, really hard. They're doing it, I'd say pretty well.
We could talk at much greater length about Aquarium, but it would take up the whole rest of the interview. So let's continue with the historical narrative, shall we? Viewers can find out more about Aquarium at Convecta's website. In August 2008, you released Rybka 3, and this release was yet another earthquake in the computer chess hobby, showing an ELO improvement that was calculated